All right, aloha and welcome everyone. My name is Senator Maile Shimabukuro, and we are having a joint informational briefing with the Committee on Hawaiian Affairs on the Senate side and the Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs on the House side. And today's topic of discussion is regarding Kumu Hula. And our discussions may include how to create new public policies that specifically define and protect the cultural practice while enabling its proper perpetuation, and looking at ways the state of Hawaii can further solidify its connection to hula and elevate its standing at home and abroad. On August 21st and 22nd, 2021, the inaugural Kupu Kalala Kumu Hula Convention was held with over 150 verified Kumu Hula who came together to discuss and ultimately ratify a document they called Hua Makahikina Declaration on the Integrity, Stewardship, and Protection of Hula. The document covers the abuse and ignorance of hula, including intentional and unintentional acts of cultural misappropriation. It also attempts to address many of the contemporary issues that hula faces today and seeks to be a starting point on how to move hula forward in a culturally grounded way. The committees will be pleased to hear from these representatives about this important document and the insights gained throughout the process of its creation. They also look forward to hearing recommendations on how, as policymakers, a community more can be done to safeguard this beloved cultural institution from further harm. And before we start, I'd like to give a chance for the other senators on my committee to introduce themselves, starting with our vice chair.
Aloha, I'm Jarrett Kehokalole. I represent Kailua and Kaneohe on the island of Oahu.
Mahalo. I believe Senator Hara is also present.
Yes, my name is Leslie Hara. I represent the Kaimuki area.
Mahalo. I don't know if Senator Ocasio and Senator Favela are with us yet. Are you? If you are, go ahead and speak up. Okay, if not, we also have Senator Laura Ocasio of Hilo and Senator Favela of Eva Beach on our Senate Hawaiian Affairs Committee. And now I'll pass it over to the House Chair Nakashima to introduce yourself and your committee members.
Thank you very much, Senator. The degradation of hula as a cultural practice and its role as a touch point that informs and illuminates other parts of what is known as Hawaiian culture has been significantly of concern for several years to those who teach and perpetuate it, and those who invest the time and effort into learning it. Indeed, hula is much more than the movement of the human body. It also is one way in which Native Hawaiian and Hawaiians have interpreted and made sense of their natural world for centuries. In short, hula can only be described as a capstone that holds the culture together, making understanding its practices and methods as close as to the source as possible is imperative for its survival, not just for an artistic expression, but applied cultural knowledge. So, and with that, let's see, my vice chair, Senator Matayoshi.
Hi, Rep Matayoshi. I represent parts of Kailua and Kaneohe.
Representative Lowen.
Aloha, sorry, Representative Lowen. I represent North Kona and Kailua Kona area on the Big Island.
Representative Nakamura.
Aloha, Nadine Nakamura representing East and North Shores of Kauai.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Chair. As you call the hula the capstone of the culture, the capstone of housing is DHHL. I hope we can work together to make that $600 million and leverage that very, very well. Gene Ward, Hawaii Kai. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Tokioka.
Thank you, Chair. Jimmy Tokioka, District 15, Kauai, Central Kauai. Aloha.
And Representative Todd. Who is disappeared from the screen. And I'll see Senator Favela.
Oh, Senator
Good morning.
Favela, oh, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, Senator Craig Fivella of the District 19 Eva Beach. Good
Thank
morning.
you so much for joining us.
Oh, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Okay, that's all the legislators then. Okay, well then I would love to have our distinguished panel of Kumu Hula, if you could please introduce yourselves. Who wants to start?
If you guys don't mind, Senator Shimabukuro, we will start our presentation, and as the presentation goes, each of the Kumu will be speaking at different parts.
Sure.
So if it's okay, if they do their introductions, we do our introductions as the presentation rolls. Is that okay?
Sure, that's fine. Please proceed. Thank you.
Okay.
Let me turn my speaker off, sorry.
Okay, I'm going to share screen. Can you guys let me know if you guys can see it on here? Yeah. E ulu kinyo ke akua ulu kane me kanaloi ulu ala ukwa me ka ye a e mai ano hoi dorua e ia tavaila he vai e ola e ola no e aloha mai kako oano o mehano kala hind. I am the youngest Kumu Hula in this group. I only say that to let you guys know that I'm humbled to present alongside these masters today about this very important topic. And thank you guys for your time, chairs, vice chairs, and members of both the Senate and the House. Thank you guys so much for your guys' dedication and your guys' work on Hawaiian affairs. These Kumu Hula that will be speaking today on this topic, of course, is Kumu Hula Vikiho Takamine, Kumu Hula Hokodani Hot, Kumu Hula Mapuana de Silva, and Kumu Hula Pualani Kanahele. And they will be coming up shortly. Mahalo, Senator Shimabukuro, for that kind of awesome introduction. I was like, oh, this is great. She actually did part of the presentation by introducing what has happened up to this point. Yeah, and just to go right before, or not right before that, but this is the website you can go to find out about this declaration. So we can come back to this. You guys will email this presentation out to all of you so you guys can have it after. And you can find more of the specific language that goes into detail about the topic areas that Senator Shimabukuro had talked about. Thank you so much for that. But yes, this is a landmark kind of declaration. It's never been done before. The type of gathering that was had in August of 2021 was unprecedented, in that matter. Kumu Hula joined together all the time for competition, just amongst their lineages and so forth. And this is the first time that we had a great cross-lineal gathering of the hula world. Was at Makahikina at the Kupukalala convention in August of 2021. And what was spoken about there, I divided up the, just so that we could, see what we're talking about today, into these areas. Yeah. What is the state of hula today? Some of the threats and challenges, and some of this language comes directly out of that declaration. What is hula, and who are Kumu Hula? That's the number one and number two questions we always get as hula people. And then three, and then you'll hear directly from our masters, our Kumu Hula, who are here today, their Ike on these areas. And then fourth, we'll go through a little timeline of the mo'oku'ohau of action to protect and perpetuate Native Hawaiian beliefs and practices, which is kind of the crux or the core of what we believe hula does, right, in both practice and in theory, right? This is what it does. It perpetuates and protects Hawaiian beliefs and practices. Then fifth, we'll talk a little bit about the declaration and what it hopes to accomplish and its kind of next steps, and then the call to action. What is it? Why is it that we're sharing this with all of you? So the state of hula. Now there's 1,000 things that can be put in bullet points when it comes to how people feel or see or experience hula. Yeah, just some things to put out there, right? There's millions of hula dancers around the world, right? They spread across the globe. It's estimated Japan alone has an estimated 2 million. There's maybe less than 300 lineal acknowledged Kumu Hula in the world, and we'll get into what that definition is and why that's so important. Some of the challenges that we see, and that I believe it was Representative Nakashima. Yes, Representative Nakashima. Thank you for your your definition and exploration of hula. Earlier, you covered some of these ideas, but some of the challenges that we face, right, are abuse. There's a misrepresentation, cultural misappropriation, exploitation, and abuse of hula, right? Those pictures to the right are just some of the types of images, right? It's been exotified. It's also been animated. It's been cartoon, changed into these types of images. There's also ignorance, right? There's widespread ignorance and misunderstanding about the practice and performance of hula, its functions within society, education, and the transmission of knowledge that happens through hula. Yeah, and that as hula as a Kanaka Maoli traditional and customary practice, right? Some people don't realize that. They see just the entertainment value of it or perspective of it. Sorry. The other challenges we have is the protection of it, right? There's insufficient protection for Kanaka Maoli culture and knowledge that's maintained within and embodied by hula. Yeah, we see it all the time. There's we're constantly battling against the policies and decision making that happens not only in government but in business also, to maintain the kind of sanctity of this cultural practice. Recognition. There are disparities in how the rigors and highly specialized processes that Kumu Hula go through to get trained and acknowledged along with their years and experience. They're recognized and the value of them by other institutions, say higher ed institutions or government institutions or even business institutions that don't place a high value on that rigor and training that a Kumu Hula has to go through. And therefore the devaluing of the whole system, the Kumu Hula, the halal, and so forth. Another challenge is access and resourcing. Yeah, the picture that you see to the right is of a sketch drawing, actually a really nice drawing of a halau, a facility that's built, for the use and practice of Hawaiian culture and hula specifically, right? Whereas we can drive around our communities today and find a baseball field or a swimming pool or a skate park, and there's a disconnect between the value of hula and what hula brings to the community and exactly how much hula practitioners there are, right? Especially from children, from baby time all the way to our kupuna, right? There's so much people involved in it, but there's a lack in kind of resourcing this area, this particular practice. So to the definition of what hula is, this is something that the declaration itself and the people who sat there and tried to draft this declaration out, we struggled with, what is a definition of a Kumu Hula and what is a definition of hula itself, right? And for Kumu Hula, right, we say hula as tangible and intangible cultural heritage of Kanaka Maoli is under the exclusive stewardship of the Kumu Hula. Yeah. Kumu Hula are individuals who belong to hula lineages through which they were trained, who have been granted kuleana, or the responsibility to steward hula by their Kumu Hula, right? So there's this is a necessary step. Your Kumu Hula has to have acknowledged and passed on, information and knowledge to you, and acknowledge that. And these Kumu Hula who are genuinely acknowledged and accepted by the broader hula community, and who maintain enduring ties to Hawaii, right? So plenty of people have that question like, okay, can you be a Kumu Hula in California? Can you be a Kumu Hula in Japan? Can you be a Kumu Hula, elsewhere? And it was like, okay, that's not the mea nui is not where you end up, but one, what is your source? Who is your source, and where does your source come from? And are you still connected to Hawaii, no matter where you are in the world? And these, of course, are some pictures of some of our the Kumu who are on this call, some of the people who are giving us that responsibility, who have taught us, trained us to perform this responsibility. Now, hula, right? We go in the declaration itself. Hula is spelled out in a long list of bullet points, but this pretty much kind of captures how it is that we can come up with a very solid working definition of what hula is. Yeah? Hula is a multiplex of artistic, intellectual, and spiritual practices, perspectives, and products centered around the expression of mele, right, or the chants or the songs, right, through the bodies of the formally trained dancers. Mele can be defined as poetry, chant, or song, but mele are actually, mele are actually poetic expressions that employ layers of metaphor to convey concentrated forms, data, generations worth of observation and data that have been thickly concentrated into the lines of the mele, right? When you look at a song or you hear it and you hear Haina ia mai ana kapuana, like when you hear those lines have generations worth of knowledge in them that convey messages that help us from generation to generation. Yeah. This knowledge is only accessible to those who have inherited the mele, or to those who have been trained in how to interpret them, to break the code, if you will, of such things. This is why hula has been a repository for Hawaiian knowledge and values throughout time, right? So that's another solid definition of what hula is. It's a repository of information, of knowledge systems. This is a short little timeline of some highlighted actions so that you can see that in 2021 it's kind of like, yes, this is the time, this is when we can have this culmination of things that have happened over decades and decades, over generations for some, and culminated in this really kind of agreed upon understanding of who it is that we are and what it is that we do as Kumu Hula and Hula people. So in 1959, this was something that was brought to our attention when we did the convention, the Kumula Commission, Kumu Kalala, was that in 1959, there was a hui of Kumu, that got together from different lineages, and they made it their responsibility to kind of gather the hula people, right? And so there was initial discussions at that time. And then of course the 1970s is just like an explosion of cultural practices that get remembered, right? They get put back together. When they were, the arms were ripped off of our people and our legs and so forth. Now back in the 70s, they start to come back together, right? They start to form the body of knowledge of the Kanaka Maoli, right? So you have what is normally called the Hawaiian Renaissance, but Mayor Monarch, right, becomes such a pivotal part of not only the hula world, but Hawaii as a whole, right? Olelo Hawaii again emerges, and the political actions to make it legal again to teach Hawaiian language back in the classroom, all that starts to happen during the 70s. Of course, Kaho'olawe, right, is happening, and that return to aloha aina, and or that more, maybe not return because our people never left, that practice and that belief of aloha aina, but it was now being put out there for others in Hawaii to start to take part in. And practices now are being redefined, molded. Chants are now necessary. Pule are necessary. Hula, it becomes very necessary in the movement to have Hokulea launched, right? The movement to have Kaho'olawe healed and so forth. In the 1990s, we see some real kind of legislative and political actions happening, around a couple of things. PASH happens, in the mid 1990s, towards the later 1990s, and starts to, right, erupt the hula world again, to come together, and then Ili'u'ula Kalani is formed, right? Right before that, in 96, you have Iwi Kupuna becoming one of the issues that is now known amongst more people, because the unearthing of Kupuna on the island of Maui, right, sets off a whole string of events that happens not only here in Hawaii, but then has federal law that it influences, right? NAGPRA happens during that time. And then the early 2000s, right, you get Ka'ahahula o Halawa'ola, right, the World Conference on Hula that starts to happen. It begins in 2001, ends in 2018, and goes from island to island and throughout our Pai'aina in 4-year intervals, and brings the hula world together declaration, right, which this declaration, the Hua Makahikina Declaration, reaffirms that declaration that was done in the early 2000s, and which focused on intellectual property, that Ili'u'ula Kalani and Ativikima, led the charge on that. Then, of course, in the mid to nearer 2000s, we have Mauna Kea erupting, figuratively, not literally, but with activity, with people turning to the Mauna for many different things. And you see the role of hula and chant and pule now kind of on a world stage, a different kind of world stage, not the Merrimonic stage, right? It becomes an event that the world gravitates to, and more importantly, our own people. And they start to participate by the masses in hula, in chant, in pule. Yeah. And then in 2000, in January of 2000, you have like the official start of COVID-19 spreading across the world. By the end of 2000, right around August of 2000, Hawaii hits its highest numbers that it's ever had. It hits, at that time, the number was 300, I believe it was 360 in one day. The Kumu Hula react to that, right? And say, this is enough, right? Our world is hula people. We know that we are about life, right? We are about our communities, right? And our halau are made up of kind of every facet of our communities. And we knew that we had a role to play in making the well-being of our people here in Hawaii more prominent. We knew that we had influence over that. So we launched La Hui Kanaka, which was a campaign to lower the numbers and flatten the curve of COVID-19 back in late 2020. And the numbers went down, right? The numbers, we saw a nice drop in numbers between the later end of September, October, November, December. By the end of the year, Hawaii was doing very well. As far as its numbers, we were getting our numbers down, and we were reaching out into our communities, especially those that had the high counts, Native Hawaiians, Micronesian, or other Pacific Islanders, and the Filipino communities, right? We were really pulling our influence across there. That led into a discussion about what else can Kumu Hula do now. Now we're talking, again, we're seeing that there's, a bigger world of influence. And some of those basic questions came up when people were reviewing the economic state of Hawaii, right? We started to have those conversations too. Kumu Hula started to, you know, yeah, the hotels are all shut down now, but when they start to open up, right? This is a question that's been asked across all the sectors. When they start to open up again, when business starts going again, what is it and how is it that we want hula to be presented, and how is it that we express our true value, right? Not only within our communities and within the cultural realm, but also in the economic realm too. How is it? And so we started having these discussions, which led to an August 2021 gathering of over 150 Kumu Hula that sat there and painstakingly went through every line of the finished product declaration, and it was then ratified by over 200 Kumu Hula, linearly identified and descended Kumu Hula. And that is a huge task that we're very proud of. Yeah? And so that kind of brings us up to this point, and I'm gonna introduce or bring forward our first of our Kumu Hula to share her wealth of ike with all of you on this topic.
Aloha ke kako. I think mahalo Mehana for all that you said, and I think she said everything. But I do have a short little snippet to add to the idea of hula, and I guess eventually Kumu Hula. Hula for today, hula is our oldest ceremonial tradition. And we look at hula as dance, but it's really a ceremonial tradition. And initially, it was what we look at as hula kapu. And the ceremonial tradition, and you know, when we became Christians, people pulled away from the ceremonial part of the traditions, except for a few Kumu Hulas who maintained the ceremony. My grandmother was one of them. And so we picked up a lot of the ceremonial part of the tradition from my grandmother. And we were very honored and happy when Mauna Kea became a part of our lives, and that also became part of the ceremonial traditions. And so we carried on the ceremonial traditions with Mauna Kea. It was an opportunity. And so we taught everybody ceremony for that tradition, for that particular movement. And it wasn't so much a protest as it was, how do we as Hawaiians get together and honor this great mountain that we have had in its presence for forever. And if I can look at the idea of 20 centuries as being forever, then it is forever. And so it was an opportunity for us as Hawaiians to go back to the idea of hula as ceremony. And with that, we also welcomed hundreds of people from around the world who approached Mauna Kea ceremonially and presented offerings. Here we are at a different level of practice. We danced, and we had people there that never danced before in their life, and they were honored to dance. And we taught everybody to dance, and it was spread throughout the island, spread throughout the western states of the United States. And we all did ceremony together at the same time. It was huge. Hula was back. Ceremony was back. And so when we talk about the ceremony, what are we talking about? We're talking about environmental elements. What do we know about our environmental elements? Before we became Christians, environmental elements were called akua. Akua was God after it was introduced in a dictionary to us, after the dictionary became part of the reading for the Hawaiians. But prior to that, it was not God, it was environmental elements. So we have a lot of nomenclatures that have to do with environmental elements. And so why am I talking about this? Because the environmental elements are found in Mele'oli. And these are nomenclatures that are found in the Mele'oli. And nomenclatures such as Kane Kawai'ola, Kane Ho'alani. The idea of the nomenclature is that that first word is the energy. And the energy of Kane is heat. And you have heat from the sun, you have heat from the middle of the earth. All of those things were composed in the Mele'oli. And when we go to dance, what we do is keep that idea alive. And we have done that forever. For 20 centuries, we have kept the idea of Mele'oli alive by dancing it, by going through the hula. And we have taken it from one generation to another. And at one point in the 1800s, it was cut off. People said, you can't do hula anymore. You're Christians, you can't do this. Okay. Except there were a few people that continued to do it. Okay. And it's a good thing my grandmother came from teachers that was stubborn about maintaining that. And so they continued, and the idea of the environmental elements as akua were, because they were depended upon to provide the necessities for life, such as the volcano. And why is the volcano important? We live on an island that's made of volcano. And the mentality of the Hawaiian was that our island comes out of the ocean and it goes back into the ocean eventually. So it's not forever. So if it's here, honor it. We honor the volcano. And we have mele'olis about volcanoes, hundreds of them. Okay, we have mele'olis about the air, what's in the air, how the air is related to the movement of the earth and what's rising up from the earth. How the air is related to parts of Mauna Kea, and how the air is related to water, and how the air is related to clouds. Our mele'olis are about all of these things, about sun, about moon, about the forest, about rain, and we dance it. We dance it over and over and over. That's why I cannot understand why foreigners are doing the dances, because they're about Hawaii. And so I'm thinking, okay, so they're allowing, or they're helping to maintain the environment of Hawaii by doing our dances over and over again, by pushing these ideas off and remembering it and honoring it and allowing it to live for generations. That's what we do as hula. We're allowing it to live as generations. But this idea is deep knowledge. And most of us dance for entertainment today, because that's what's hula has become in the early 1900s. People like the way the body moves, and so it's become entertainment for a greater part of the world and a greater part of society. But for some others, Maintaining the oli and the mele hula is why they do what they do. And so for us, it's a way of maintaining who we are, where we are, and why we are. The idea of Kumu Hula during my grandmother's time in the early 1900s is when they found out that somebody was going to be a Kumu Hula, they put a panel of people together from all around the island. And they came together to question this person who thought they were going to become Kumu Hula. And they wanted to know what you know about hula. And if you didn't come up to their standard, you're not Kumu Hula. Okay. And so that's what we're laxed on. We're laxed on questioning those who want to be Kumu Hula. You need to know what is in the oli or in the songs that has to do with maintaining the islands. That's what we dance about, maintaining the islands. I already said that, halopo. But the idea of Kumu Hula is that you're responsible for deep knowledge. And today, we have Kumu Hulas who are mostly at the lower part of knowledge. Most of them are choreographers and great choreographers, but they really know nothing about the hula hula. Okay, and so we have few people who are at a level of actually knowing what they dance about, why they dance it, why it's necessary to maintain it. But today, choreography is most important, which to me is sad. Okay, I think that's all I have to say. I don't want to complain. I sound like a complainer already, but I put it out there. So I thank all of you for paying attention, and aloha to Mark Nakashima. Mahalo. I'm done.
You're muted.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, okay, kalamai. I say mahalo nui, Auntie Pua, again, Kumu Hula, Pualani Kanahele from the island of Hawaii. Mahalo nui for that. And now we'll go on to Kumu Hula Vicky, Hope Takamine.
Aloha. I don't really have much more to add to what Mehana and Auntie Pua have shared. I think one of the key things is that we know that when our islands were colonized and our language was being stamped out and our culture was being stamped out, it is the hula that survived all of that. The hula survived, and like as quote, forms of entertainment for the lahui, for the ali'i. And so our ali'i kept the hula alive in the privacy of their own. There are still mele that were being composed for our ali'i during those times. There's still mele that were being performed at Pritzlat, encouraged, people to come to his summer home to share hula, to share at the wedding of Kamehameha IV and Queen Emma. We have all of those. So while our history and our knowledge, our ike, are all buried in these mele, and that's what's so important. And as we share these mele with next generation, we're also educating them on what's important. So we have used hula, and we have used our knowledge of hula and our knowledge of our Hawaiian culture and sacred sites to help to protect those areas, those sacred sites that are from being overdeveloped, and for the protection of our water, for the protection of our aina, for protection of our sacred sites. And because all of those place names and all of those histories are buried there, we've helped to introduce legislation that would require that a cultural impact statement be part of the environmental impact statement. What's the impact of your development on our cultural practices? And that has been very critical to maintain and to keep. I think this is what we have collectively as the Kumu Hula have helped to shape some of the legislations and policies that have been introduced to the legislature that we can use and we can rely on to help for protection of our aina. I look at that right now. I live in Aiea. I live right above Red Hill. I'm in that valley. I mean, in that Ahupua'a that's being affected by the water. And so we are the community that will help to protect our lands and our natural resources. I think we are the largest arts organization in the state of Hawaii. As Mehana said, but I think to put in perspective, we teach the most keiki through kupuna elders in every ahupua'a on every island. We have more hula people than ballet people, than opera people, than symphony people. And yet we get the least funding. And we are like, I was talking to somebody, cannot teach hula in our own homes, in our backyards, because it is, quote, a business. And you cannot have a business in your backyard, in your own home that has hula. So I'm saying, we have to talk about that. Where else do we have? Can we teach hula? If we don't have, cannot do it in our own, the privacy of our own home, but we don't have public spaces for that. So as the largest arts organization in the state, with the most practitioners, we do not have facilities for that community. And so when we talk about the lack of resources and the lack of funding, this is why we're here to share these stories with you. And I'm going to end right there because I know our time is short and pass it on to Hoku. Or I'm not sure, Mehana, who's next?
Yep. Is the screens coming up? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm from the island of Maui, Kumu Hula, Hokulani Holt.
Okay. E kane lo no na kua mahi ai. Ho'ola I ka aina. Apo ho ka aia ulu kupu kupu a ulu lau po o lea. Oh, e kane amelo no. Amama ua noa, ua lele kapule. Aloha mai kako. I am Hokulani Holt. I am from the district of Kawahea in the moku of Wailuku on the island of Maui. I am the Kumu Hula of Pa'uohi'iaka and which has been in existence for 45 years. This year will make our 46th year. The chant I just did for you is a chant that entreats our elemental beings of Kane and Lono, that they may help to grant life to our environment until there is so much food, that food goes to waste, that everything germinates and vegetation is thick until there is abundant food for all. Yes, to you, Kane and Lono, this is the chant that asks for an abundant environment. So these kinds of chants are what are taught in Halau, are what are taught to our students, that when they voice the 20, 30, 40, 50 of them that voice this one chant, we know it will happen, that we will have abundance, there will be rain, there will be an environment that will grow things, and that the people will be supported. That was the belief of our kupuna, and thus they wrote these chants. They believe that when you say these things over and over, and you are reminded that that is our responsibility too, and we say them over and over, we remember, our environment remembers, and our community and the people in our community remember. And so those are some of the reasons why we must have Halau. As you have heard over and over again, Halau are non-discriminatory. We teach everyone, anyone, everyone. We don't care your age, your physical ability, your gender, where you live, what you do for a living. Hula provides that for all. I betcha all of you folks here, you can name one person that takes hula. Some of you can name more than one person that takes hula. But can you name one person that uses the skateboard park? Maybe yeah, maybe no. But you can certainly name somebody that does hula. I teach this olelo no eau in my halau. A'ai ka hula waiho ka hila hila makahale, which means dare to dance, leave your shyness at home. More than dance though, I teach them dare to be bold. Dare to stand on this world stage that we call our home, and dare to be bold and say the things that are important to you. That is important for our community as well. There are a couple of things that I would like to bring forward that comes out of the declaration. One says that we believe that hula and Kumu Hula their knowledge must be viewed commensurate with college degree attainment. A Kumu Hula who has done the training that is required to become a Kumu Hula can spend a minimum of 10 years at one course of study, another 10 years at another course of study, much more than what is required in our colleges. And yet, we do not recognize a Kumu Hula who has gone through the rights and responsibilities given to them by their Kumu Hula or the Uniki process. We do not recognize that as viable information. That you have to go to college, learn from Kumu Hula outside the college in order for you to get your degree in college. Why that's important is that when you go and you apply, a Kumu Hula goes to apply for a job, they will ask you, what is your degree? The minimum required degree for this job is a bachelor's degree that takes 4 years. A Kumu Hula takes 10 years for their first level. Where is the equity in that? That our knowledge base is not viewed equitably to knowledge base in the Western world. Yet, and I'm gonna talk to all of you senators, I betcha, every single one of you has asked a Kumu Hula for help, for pieces of information, to come and bless your office, to come and bless a piece of land, to come and think about give Ike into your community needs. I betcha every single one of you have asked, and we have never refused. We always come. We normally do not ask for remuneration. We don't ask, okay, Senator Keoho Kalole, I will come for you, but I need $50 an hour to come and talk to you. I bet you not. I bet you we come freely and we give freely. That comes from all of these 20, 30 years of knowledge gaining, experience, and all the things that you value as well. The second point I want to make is hula supports our economy. Hula supports our economy not only because we teach but we also support the farmers when we need lei material, when we need flowers, when we're going to do performances. We all go down, well, I don't because I live in Maui, but everybody else goes down to Mauna Kea Street, supports the lei makers, and makes the economy grow because of hula. We support the fabric designers. We tell our halau of 100 people, go and get this particular piece of clothing because we all need to wear it. They will go and they will buy from this particular designer, this particular clothes. We support economy. We support fishermen and farmers for our ceremonies, our celebrations, our gatherings. We also support the economy by the sheer numbers of people that we influence. And all of that we do because we love Hawaii. We shop local. I know, I see these Kumu Hula in front of me, and I know the Kumu Hula here on Maui. We shop local. It's what we try to do all the time. Hula provides economic welfare for our communities as well. And yet, we ask but a small bit of recognition and support in order for us to help you help Hawaii flourish. Because that is our goal, is to help Hawaii flourish, help our people flourish, and help the people we help flourish. So there's a few other things coming up that will help to express what might be ways that you can do this. But no, we have to value, and that's where this comes from. We have to value hula in all of the ways that hula contributes to the welfare of Hawaii. Mahalo.
Have all the Kumu Hula spoken at this point? Oh.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. We have one more. Kumu Hula Mapuana de Silva.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Sorry, where's my screen?
It's okay, Mahana.
Yeah, sorry. Cool. We can. I'm sorry, and I'll get to grab it.
Velina Maikako, mahalo for Jared for setting this up and for allowing us this time to talk to all of you legislators. Pua and Vicky and Hoku all make really good points. We all support each other and we all feel the same way, and don't want to add anything to what they've said, but I want to add a few things from my own perspective. Some of you most people know me from Mary Monarch because we've been there forever, since 1979. The only year I missed was the year we didn't have it in 2020, and last year in 2021 because my halau voted to keep me home and keep me safe from COVID. We intend to return this year. And I would guess most of you know me from that. And so, from that and from the conversations that have been going on, you might think, oh yeah, well, she just does Mary Monarch and she puts on this big show, and she's a choreographer. Well, like Pua said, you know, she's a choreographer, and they do good stuff, and you know, they make it happen, and all of that. But the idea that Pua talks about this deep knowledge and connection, and our connection to the Aina, and to the Kai, and to the Ao, the Makani, and the Akua, and all of that, isn't dictated by where we perform or what we choose to participate in. It comes because of the work we do. And for us, for me, Mary Monarch is one of the many things I do. It's not the peak, it's not the top of the pyramid. The top of the pyramid is Uniki, and passing on this knowledge and making sure that it survives the next 500 years. And along with that is working in the community. I do a lot of iwi kupuna work here in Kailua, and I also do work trying to keep the people in Kailua from working together in all the things that we need to, issues we need to address here. So I would just want to take one example. You know, we've been going to Mary Monarch. This is going to be year 42 coming up. And every year that we go, my students have to fundraise. They have to fundraise and to go every year. Now, you know, if I had taken all that money from every Mary Monarch, I could probably have built a halau, a really good, big, huge, nice structure to teach in. But I would have the structure, but I wouldn't have all the work that I've done. And I wasn't able to do both at the same time. We got to pick and choose. And for me, part of going to Mary Monarch and going to and having Uniki and all of these other things that we do, that's the training for my students. That's where they learn all the traditional mele, the traditional loli, where they learn the relationship of these mele and these oli to who we are as Hawaiians, where we live, why we're here, and what our kuleana is while we're here. And some of my dancers, so my dancers, like on the average, they have been going fundraising for this for 10 years. No, you know, no help from nobody except the fundraising that they do. And yet you look at Mary Monarch, and it's really Mary Monarch that really brings, that's made hula popular around the world. And it is a huge part of not just Hilo's economy. I've heard from people in Hilo, the people who sell things, that they make more than half of their yearly income during that week of Mary Monarch. Yeah. We also, you know, because we're recognized on this platform, I have students from around the world who come here to Hawaii to study with me. I do sometimes go to Japan. I don't have a halau there, but I have students there. But they come here to study with me. Because like Pua said, how can you learn mele for this place if you're not here? How can you even understand it if you're not here? And yet all these things that we do, we don't get support for anywhere. And why do we do it? I've heard people in government say, well, you know, they're going to do it anyway, so we don't have to give them the money. Like, you ask for the money and they go, well, they're going to do it anyway, whether you give them the money or not. So why help them out? Why give them a grant? That's not the point. The point is we do it because it needs to be done, because it's right, because it's pono. And we ask for help because we do so much without any help. So much without any help. Think about 40 years of going to Mary Monarch. I've been renting space for 40 years. I've had numerous uniki over these years. My first Uniki was in 1989. And every time I've had two of, I would say maybe like 20 of different levels, two at my home. And that's only because the group that was going to finish was small, because my home, the pahula we have here, can only take 5 or 6 people. If I have a bigger group, I've got to go somewhere else. We've traveled to Volcano, the pahula there, to Kauai, and various places on Oahu. But we don't have a place. We don't have a place for these ceremonies. We don't have a place for these, for this, you know, the practice of what we do, and to teach the deep culture that we teach. And that, where's my note that I had for myself? And the last point I want to make was the first point that I made, is that it's not what you're preparing for and where you're performing. It's the person who is the Kumu Hula that has that deep knowledge and that can be in that ceremonial space, whether you are on a pahula, whether you are at Prince Lot, whether you are at Ulupoheo or on the Merry Monarch stage. I don't know if you guys remember 1986 Merry Monarch, when we had those big storms. You remember that year, Pua? Yeah, because we were the chants, the group chants we were doing were chants from Molokai, talking about the wind gourd of La'amamau, and all that wind was contained in the gourd. And what the Kumus before me were saying is, we say these words and do these chants over and over and over and over to re-energize, to revive this Aina that has been so westernized. We bring the Hawaii back to it because of what we do. And when these words of this wind gourd chant were repeated over and over and over, the storm brewed, and it brewed, and the power went out. It blew a transformer and the power went out for an hour and a half. And we were to go on 2 groups after that. And while we were there under the bleachers in the darkness, huddled, I decided that we didn't need to dance that night. Our akua, our kupuna, were all telling me, no need, because it's our turn. This tonight is for our voices. So when it was our turn, I went up to the microphone and I thanked everybody and I said that we will not be dancing tonight. And we didn't. I don't even remember what I said, but we didn't dance. And I'm not saying I don't have any power, but the storm died down and the next day the sun came out. Now, coincidence? I don't know. But those words repeated, our akua hear them. And somebody needed to break that cycle. It just so happened. I didn't decide to break this cycle. I decided we weren't going to dance. And then everything happened. Whatever happened after that happened after that. Now, maybe if we had danced, the same thing would have happened. I don't know. But words have power. That's why it's so important for us as hula practitioners to do all the things we do, that Pua said, that Vicky said, that Hoku said, that Mihana said, and even more than you can even imagine. And we will keep saying yes when people like you ask us to help, because that's our training. That's who we are as Kanaka. We say yes as the people of our ancestors who raised us. not as the Western clothes that we put on and the way that we were educated in a Western school. And if we are diminished and if we go away, Hawaii will lose its identity and will be run over and taken over by everything not Hawaiian. And whose responsibility will it be? Not ours, because we are doing everything in our power to keep Hawaii, Hawaii, to keep our kanaka in Hawaii, and to take care of our aina and our wai, our kuleana, our values, our olelo, and everything we know as Hawaiians. Mahalo.
Mahalo, mahalo, kumu mapuana. Thank you for that. And I'm sorry about getting your graphic up so late. I was stuck on here. And senators and representatives, we just have a couple more slides. I know, and I want to leave time for you guys to ask questions also. So this is the call to action. The call to action that's in the declaration itself. And there's some highlighted words here, especially for you folks, so you don't have to go through the whole thing. But to organize and advocate for the pono stewardship and protection of hula, right? That fits nicely within your guys' realm, to be able to do, and that will show up in bills that are spread across, that come across your desk from all over the place, from the business sector, from land development, from education, and so forth, right? And if you can keep this discussion and keep the declaration as a handy tool in your office to refer to when different actions come forward, that would be amazing. Then also maybe possibly to take a proactive step forward and create legislation could definitely be another way that this happens, right? We also asked, Hua Makahikina calls upon the policymakers to develop and implement policies and practices consistent with this declaration in full consultation with Kumu Hula. We also call upon government and the private sector to resource hula to the fullest extent possible. Yeah, you've heard that kind of resourcing hula comes in different forms, right? It comes in acknowledgement of the entirety of the work that it takes to get to a certain level within this arena. Comes with acknowledging the important role that Kumu Hula and Halau play in our communities, and also comes in a form of appropriations and dollars that go towards facilities and places where hula can be taught and perpetuated, and also in other forms. And I know you guys are thinking through a whole bunch of ways on how to improve the community. So let Kumu Hula and Halau be one of those things that are considered. That's the call to action from the declaration itself. To let you folks know where the declaration is at now, I'm sorry for that little glitch in there. Every time I move it, it shows back up on the presentation, that word now. But on November 5th, the Maui County took a very proactive measure to leap forward with this declaration and pass the resolution to support the declaration, and it's now in the hands of Budget and Finance, right? And this has led to Maui County agreeing to provide hula people a brand new facility for hula and the native arts, for which hula serves as a perfect nexus between its own practice and the rest of the native arts that's practiced here in Hawaii. There's also various other organizations that are moving to support this in different ways. One of those, CNHA, held a plenary discussion in front of all of its participants at last year in December, its annual Native Hawaiian Convention, and there was great response to that. And then finally, a resolution in support of this declaration was passed at this past weekend's Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs annual convention. Yeah, on January 16th was the date that it was passed there. So there's there's movement. There's people who are excited about this. There's definitely questions. Our community, the hula community is not one for taking things quietly or lightly, and that's great. That's just the way we should have it. We should have, you know, great debate and talk story and see how things work in its realities and for the communities that it kokuas. I put my contact information on here, and the reason why I had to put Kumu Hula in front of my name and put my contact information is I'm probably the least known out of all this wahine here, these Kumu Hula here. So I'm sure you guys have direct contacts to them if you have direct questions following this, or you can always reach out to me too. And I work here at the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement out in Kapolei, Oahu, as the Senior VP of Community Programs. Yeah, so we're definitely in support of our hula community and the work that is going to come forward. And so that's where we stop. Chair Shimobukuro, if anybody has questions or comments.
Thanks so much, Mehana. Wanted to actually check in with Cure real quick. How are we on time? Do we need to end at a certain time? I don't know if the tech can tell us that, or do we know? Okay, well, if they don't say it, then they're good. But I'm sure that members must have questions. Does anyone have any questions they want to present to this panel?
Chair.
Yes, Senator Favela.
Yeah, I agree with everybody on this panel, 101,000,000%. I first came to this Capitol and I was very educated on some of the ideas that my colleagues had set before us. I'm not sure if you know Senator Wiley, but I got this book, Senate for Hawaiian Music and Dance. And this was presented to legislation back in June 2015. I got this from Senator Donna Mercado Kim. This is the preparation, and the preparing this was because of the actual leaks. And you notice is coming before us, Senator Shirobukuro, because they want to fix the convention's leaks. So I'm sharing this with the whole hula community, is that this idea wasn't far-fetched. Again, when it comes to the hula community and Hawaiian language and dance, there's a price. So they put together this book. I'm going to show it to you guys. Okay. This book is beautiful. Anybody want to look at it, let me know. If you read the words in this book, it highlights exactly what hula is all about: sharing, caring, and giving. But when it came to this proposal, I've heard that it died because of money. Right now, the convention center wants $65 million, one crack, to fix the leaks. When this proposal was made in June of 2015, $65 million would have fixed the leak and made the roof that they're talking about on the convention center and the Center of Hawaiian and Music and Dance. The idea and the concept was exactly what all the Kumus were saying, that they give to the community and the community give back. The community give back, they give back. So the concept to me, what I heard, what it was, is that each halau was going to get a time that they could perform in this music and dance center. And when it was time for the convention center needed them to give back, because they would be able to use these facilities at the convention center to do exactly what the Kumus are saying, that then later on when the convention center or the state would ask them, hey, can you perform for one of our events at the convention center? It was a give and take thing. So this is why I'm saying this, Chair, is because this never went away in my heart. This is the second time I'm pulling this book out. One of them I shared with Darius at Representative, Stacey Eli's office. It resonates because exactly what the Kumus is saying. When it comes to this so sacred being of us, yeah, of being extinct as Hawaiians. The stories that's told through hula and dance and chant and music is not taking front and center. And I don't know if a lot of you guys heard me so far. So when Representative Sylvia Luke said about the $600 million going to Hawaiian homes, that is great. That is great. And I support that because we need to get our Hawaiians off of the list and get into homes. But again, we need to continue in all avenues in putting Hawaiians first because we haven't been first for a long time. Our cultural, our dance, our music haven't been first because right now it's still an elective in a high school level on Hawaiian language and dance when it should not be an elective. It should be a requirement to graduate high school, to learn your language, learn your dance, and learn about being Hawaiian going forward. So I take the opportunity. I love this whole presentation. Thank you, Chair. Every day of my life I'm here. I'm always learning, and I embrace this. Whatever the Kumus need us to do, I'm 110% behind them in whatever we need to do going forward as a people. And again, thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. Mahalo.
Thank you so much, Senator Favela. Any other comments, questions from legislators? Okay, as well, we will go to the House. We'll go back and forth. I see Representative Ward raise his hand.
Shall we wait for the House or the Senate? I yield to the senator, whoever was that less.
Oh, okay. I think I saw Vice Chair Keo'ololi's hand up.
There you go.
I want to acknowledge, thank you so much to Senator Keo'ololi for, he's really the one that put this together. And mahalo for that, Jared. Really appreciate that. So if you want to make a comment or a question, please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Chair, both chairs and Kumu for this. Can you, I guess whoever wants to share, can you talk about the lineal acknowledgement part of this? I think Hokulani, you mentioned this as well. You know, we've had a lot of problems over the years with the Made in Hawaii program. And everybody saw what happened with Aloha Poke. That was, I think, really frustrating for probably everybody, not just Hawaiians. And it seems to me like I think in the declaration it says lineal acknowledgement. Is that, would you folks characterize that as, you know, an effort to try and distinguish between what is made in Hawaii and what isn't?
Yeah, lineal descendants is how we have always looked at hula. We have always, and it's a two-pronged part. One is we have, and Mehana brought it up in the presentation, is that we hold a responsibility to the information that has been given to us. When it is passed on from Kumu Hula to Kumu Hula to Kumu Hula, we hold that information, that training, that teaching that was given to us as an important part. So we are responsible for those that have come before us and the information that we have. And then we are responsible for the generations to come beyond us. As Mapuana talked about her uniki that she has, she passes on these informations from teacher to teacher to teacher. And hula is the only cultural practice that has never gone away. Never gone away from the beginning of Hawaiian time. There has always been hula. So we have an unbroken connection. And what we're saying to that is, without that passing on from teacher to teacher, there is a break in this knowledge base and in the importance that this knowledge base holds. So yes, in a way, it is like that made in Hawaii, done in Hawaii, like the declaration says, a continual link to Hawaii is absolutely necessary. Absolutely. And so, you know, the idea of lineal descent, and lots of people get a little hot under the collar sometimes when you talk about this, but it is tremendously important, just like, and this might be a junk comparison, but this is the comparison nevertheless. People who graduate from Stanford and become doctors, when you see that little certificate on their wall that they're a doctor and they graduated from such and such school, you trust that there has been the learning process necessary to bring this doctor to you. You see that, you trust that the doctor has the knowledge that they are required to have in order to serve you. Kumu Hula to Kumu Hula is like that. We trust that the learning that this Kumu Hula got from their teacher ensures the appropriate knowledge base is being continued. Not all Kumu Hula, and I'll give you this example because I know we all know this example. Mother taught her child's kindergarten class a hula for May Day. The other mothers saw and say, can you teach my baby hula? Oh, well, you know, I don't know too much. I only know this. No, never mind. They go to the garage. They learn in the garage. Before you know it, they're being called a Kumu Hula. And before you know it, they're being called a Kumu Hula of a halau. That's like the dentist that didn't finish his certificate working on your mouth. There's no trust in the knowledge base that brings you there. Lineal descent provides a way to begin that trust. So yes, Senator, it can be looked at, made in Hawaii, for the knowledge base that comes out of Hawaii into those generations to follow. Yes.
Mahalo.
Sorry, everyone, I've got to run to another meeting, but I want to thank everyone for your for the briefing. Really appreciate it. Thank you all.
Mahalo, mahalo. I see that Kumu Hula Holt Takamine has her hands up. I don't know if you wanted to also respond to that question.
Yeah, real briefly, I think with the Made in Hawaii, there are some issues that I think we have with that, because it's about the percentage of work that is done on a product that makes it made in Hawaii. So you can import a lauhala basket from the Philippines, and you can make a flower out of fabric and decorate it. And then you add more things on top of that. That was made here. So that would create the time that you put in to decorate this Filipino imported lauhala basket, and you put in a percentage of time and resources. You bought the fabric, but the fabric came from Taiwan, but it was bought here, and then your time put in, or even so the amount of percentage, it's an issue about the percentage. One of the ways is that if we can trace your cultural practice, like a feather maker. So one of my students, Kavikalam Nelmida, studied with Auntie Paulette Kahalipuna, who was studied with her mother, Mary Lou Kekueva, who are acknowledged kumu of master feather work. And so he does kahili, but all of the feathers that he uses are imported because we don't have those feathers. So now the feather work that he does, well, the 80% of it is all from outside of Hawaii, doesn't make it made in Hawaii because those feathers were imported. But the time and effort that he put into creating the kahili pa'alima, the ahu'ula, the leihulu, that time has to be factored into the resources. So there's a little issue with the—
Well, so I guess the question, excuse me, the the question I would have is, you know, the rules around that Made in Hawaii program and the imports on how much Kona coffee got to be in the bags for it to be Kona coffee, are that the state sets those rules. And part of what I think is really interesting about this is that you folks all got together and came up with it yourselves. So I would be interested in what, you know, I guess for discussion purposes, the legislature and the state can do without having hula be regulated in the DCCA, right? Because I don't know that that's the right way to go.
And I don't think that's what we're asking. You know, they cannot be regulated by state legislators who know nothing about hula. I think the resolution to support the declaration, to support the Pauokalani Declaration that were designed and drafted by Kumu Hula is what we're asking for at this point.
And then, like Senator Vivella says, if you have another 53 million lying around, we want to build a building.
No, we want one on every moku though. Can it just be on Oahu? On every...
I'm good for now. Thank you, chairs. Yeah.
Okay. I think Rep. Ward, I think you had a question or a comment.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you. It's an honor to be in the presence of such distinguished cultural practitioners, Kumu Hulas. I've never seen so many in one place at one time. Everything I know about Hawaiian music was with my business partner, George Kanahele. Didn't go too much into hula so much as all. Can you guys hear me okay? Oh, okay, yep. Good. And from there, I guess I'm kind of ignorant, so I'm going to ask some questions that are very basic. Am I to understand that anybody who's self-proclaimed a Kumu Hula becomes a Kumu Hula? Is it that Wild West still? Still that, okay, so like the senator said, if you don't want to go to the DCCA route, there must be some kind of a certification or education halfway house, so you have some control over it. I get the sense that there is a need to get a control or at least some kind of proprietary rights, or, you know, if you remember how Waikiki was being complained upon being such a commercialization of aloha. Well, this is the commercialization and the misuse of hula in the same context. In that, I have another question are there actual guidelines? I know there's the declaration, but are there the do's and don'ts that the guy in the street can know about hula? Is there an educational booklet, or I don't know, Senator Favela, in fact, let me commend you for the enthusiasm we need in the legislatures, the enthusiasm and the political will that you just expressed. If we had enough political muscularity of Hawaiians in the legislature, this million and the other things would be a piece of cake. So thank you for your enthusiasm. We just don't have the money or enough Hawaiians in the legislature yet. But the question is, how can we do something without over-regulating, but at the same time just letting it go freewheeling as it is right now? I don't know the question or the answer to that. And is there an educational do's and don'ts, guidelines for people to, you know, there's a whole thrust now, not only from Maui, but the whole thing about, hey guys, if you're going to come to Hawaii, respect the culture. And by the way, here's some do's and don'ts. This is kind of coming out of HTA, managed tourism, the things about neighborliness, about what it means, the aina, the Hawaiian sense of place. That obviously is one of the suggestions that come out of this. And the other thing came out of the first few sentences as we started out, and I thought it was very clever, even though it may not have been intended, a halau or hale in every state or city park. That would be fantastic. Not only would it be aesthetically pleasing, it would say, look, this is Hawaii, these are our parks, and that hale is significant of that. That would be tremendous. And we've got one in Hawaii Kai, right on the corner of Hawaii Kai Drive in Keahole. It was a gift from Kamehameha Schools for a kind of a quasi-public partnership with Bryce. But I think that is something to pursue, which again, the political will is going to have to cough up a lot of money to do that. But if it's done with cooperation of the community, even how self-help builds houses for different people in the community, I think it's there. So basically, I see the momentum that's happening. The 600 million, Senator Falal, is as much symbolic as it is real. It shows your Hawaiian first is coming to pass. The prayers of Liliuokalani are still in existence and still alive. They haven't, the shelf life hasn't gone away. So I would just encourage all of you, just keep pressing on and doing as much as Chair Shima Bukuro and Chair Keo Kolole and our Chair, where is, oh, there, the Chair Nakashima is doing. That's making progress. Otherwise, this has been very educational. Thank you so much. But if we can't do certification, I think we got to start with education. Thank you. Any comments?
Yeah, just to be completely clear, traditionally, Halau and Kumu Hula are community-based. You know, traditionally they're community-based. They are part of the community that they exist in. And because there are so many, our communities, just like our communities do, we have grown. So in addressing Representative Ward's idea or thought about, yes, halau or places for hula in every community, it is what we are saying is needed. It's what we have been working on here on Maui, and thus we do have a building going up that the County of Maui is supporting, and we continue to encourage them halau in every community. We don't let them forget, like we're not gonna let you forget.
That's key.
And that's what we said. And to be completely honest, that's what this declaration is about. It is the concerted effort of 200 Kumu Hula who have come together and said, this is important. We lay this at your doorstep and ask that you help us. And we outline for you why and how. So the declaration is the first step. It's not the only step, but thank you for knowing that it is our first step.
And thank you for saying you have to do follow-up, because as you lay it at the doorstep, you're going to have to knock on the door. Sometimes you may have to push it open a little bit with the legislature. Thank you for that response.
But I also think, Kalamai, I also think it's a public-private partnership that we can help to raise money in our communities and outside of Hawaii to raise funds. But the initial start, it's really helpful if you have something. Most of our funding needs matching funds. If we have matching funds, we can go out to we have funds and we can go out to raise funds to match it.
Are any of you friends with Zuckerberg, who just gave the university another $50 million for, I mean, okay, that's real, but it's a bit of a fantasy right now.
All right. Are there others that want to make comments or questions? Other legislators looking for, I'm scrolling through to see if there's any hands up. So I'm on my phone, so if you do, just feel free to speak up. Okay. Anybody? Not. Actually, I had a quick question. Is your group in discussions with Hawaii Tourism Authority, about that Center for Music and Dance that they want to use TAT funding for? Are they consulting with you folks on that?
Not with me on Maui.
Okay.
And I see the other heads going, nope.
Yeah, because that funding has been sitting there for quite some time. And I specifically asked HTA because they met with several of us to talk about what they're trying to plan for this next coming session. Because I know some people have said, should that money, since it's just sitting there and not being used, go to Bishop Museum? And their response was no. That they want to go forward with the Center for Hawaiian Music and Dance that it's intended to have, and it sounds like that would be in line with what you folks are supporting. And And I really am glad we had this meeting, because when I heard that, it sounds like it's a single center for Hawaiian music and dance, but what maybe would be a better approach is use these funds and disperse it throughout the island, so that it's not just all Oahu centric. So anyway, okay, well that's important for me to know. So I'll make sure that we push onto HTA that you folks need to be part of their discussion and part of their planning. Since it's aimed to support exactly what you folks are talking about, is what it sounds like. So anyway, okay.
Miley, can I ask another question? Oh,
okay,
sorry.
sure, board. Yes, go ahead.
I yield to Polani Kanahele.
Oh, and George Kanahele was my brother-in-law.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I owe you a debt of gratitude for a lot of things I know correctly or maybe incorrectly about Hawaii. Okay. And he still never learned Hawaiian. He never learned his Hawaiian very good, even though he went around with things in his ears and his tape, in those days, tape recorders. My question is clarification of when it was mentioned. I forget who mentioned the 2 million Japanese who are hula and with Kumu Hulas. I know when Governor Lingle had a ground tour, some of our legislators were there. They had, hundreds of hula dancers that welcomed us at Yokohama. Have they done anything that could provoke us to jealousy regarding this very issue? Have they got halaus and Kumu Hulas physically in different places? The question is there anything we can learn from them and what they're doing? And I wasn't sure if it was kind of pejorative, like, hey, they've got 2 million and they're kind of stealing our culture away versus, imitation is kind of the highest level of flattery. How do you take the proliferation, if you will, in Japan? Like in Germany, Hawaiian music is probably the most popular music in the nation.
Well, those kinds of numbers are skewed because they've got many more millions of people. So when you say 2 million hula dancers, that's in a country of how many millions of people? When you look at how many 100,000s are in Hawaii, and that percentage-wise in Hawaii, so the sheer number is a little deceiving. But yes, there are many halau, there are many groups. Hula exists in Japan the same way it exists here in Hawaii, in that there are like informal groups that get together and dance. They're formalized halau that get together and dance. So just like we have YMCA that does hula, they have the same kind of thing that do hula. So much the same way. The difficulty is, well, I don't know about the rest of these guys, but they have their own term. Their term is sensei. Yeah, their term for a teacher is a sensei. I believe many of those of us on our panel believe that the term Kumu Hula belongs to us. It belongs to us. It does not belong outside of us. Here in Hawaii, trained and that title given in the ways that we have just said. So are there Kumu Hula in Japan? Maybe. Are there sensei? Definitely. So part of that is semantics, but it's important semantics to us. I teach, I think many of us teach in Japan. I don't think Pua does, but Mapuana does, I do. My sensei come here, just like Mapuana. My sensei come here to learn because it's important they be in Hawaii in order to learn about Hawaii. I do not call them a Kumu Hula. I do not allow their students to call them Kumu Hula. I only allow them to call them sensei, because in their culture, that is the epitome of a teacher, is a sensei. I allow that. I do not allow them to call them Kumu Hula because they have not done what we have done. The others can join in if you wish.
They have a Merry Monarch also then?
There's only one Merry Monarch.
Oh, Okay.
There's only
Thank
one
you,
Mary
Monarch.
Monarch.
Okay.
There
thank you.
are many, many hula competitions, yes,
Ah,
but there is only one Mary Monarch.
thank you.
And by the way, Mary Monarch does not allow foreigners.
Mm. Interesting. May I ask Jared a question? Is the legal advisor here? Can there be a trademark copyright of the terms that we're using here, Kumu Hula or hula in any way, or is this getting a little bit too far afield, Jared? In the way that she will not allow them to say you can be a Kumu Hula, no, you're a sensei. I mean, which is culturally most appropriate. But is there any legal protections that any of this could be implied? You remember we put aloha into the statutes and defined it. Could we put hula into the statutes and define it? The way that I think it was in the early 2000, late 1900 something.
Sounds like an
Question.
interesting bill idea, Gene.
Oh, okay. Well, wait, because I mean, literally we put aloha in the statutes. So why can't we put hula or Kumu Hulas in the statutes? It was a guideline, basically. Anyways, that's just an idea that came out of this.
And I think as Kumu Hulas, we ought to get together and actually come up with some ideas of how we can copyright that, because somewhere down the road, somebody will think about copywriting it.
Mm-hmm.
And like at one time, they thought of copywriting aloha. And we also need to get together and talk about exactly what is a Kumu Hula, because we haven't really done that. And so we, you know, as Kumu Hulas, we still have a lot of things to talk about. So I think that we need to have that time. I will also, Hoko, I will also talk to John, because he's the head of HDA, and he's a great person to talk to.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'd be happy to come with you, Paul, if you wish.
May I have one more 2 cents worth, and it's piggybacking
Sure,
on Senator Favela.
Yeah, Board.
In the educational component, Senator, I totally agree with you, but I want to cite what anthropologists say. Anthropologists say the eyes into the culture are through the language. I would say a basic prerequisite, a Hawaiian language at some level in the elementary or high school as a prerequisite to graduation. That logically follows in the line of what you're talking about. But and the Maoris are the great example, where they've kept their language and therefore the culture proliferates because people can speak Maori to one another. I know with Hawaiians it's probably somewhat limited still, but if you could add on to your enthusiasm for education about hula and music, I would say add language into that, and it would really bring culture much alive, as the anthropologists have said. And being that
I also would like to say that one of the reasons why Maui Creative Arts has proliferated is because they have put money towards it. There is such a thing as Creative Maori, in which a office, a department, and money is put forward into creative Maori things. So it isn't only a groundswell. They have governmentally done that as well.
Okay, I think if there's any final comments, I think we need to be wrapping up pretty soon.
I have a
final.
Representative Ward, we don't really pay attention to the anthropologists or the archaeologists and what they say about us.
Neither do I. I only quote them occasionally.
Because we're all, we're all being educated in the Western system, as well have a great passion for being Hawaiian.
Well, Nani, I think the point is, let's have a second Hawaiian Renaissance. I mean, George Kanahele was and you were part of the first one. It sounds like this is the beginning of a second Hawaiian Renaissance, and I would encourage all of you Kumu Hulas to push for that, to awaken the people, which now is kind of the precipice of saying, yeah, Hawaiians first. Okay, my last 2 cents. Thank you, Chair.
I'd like to throw out the idea of a Ministry of Culture and a Minister of just Native Hawaiian culture, not different from the State Foundation on Culture and Arts, where they take in all of the cultures that live in Hawaii. We should have a dedicated Ministry of Culture like the rest of the Pacific Islands do, the countries across the Pacific, and have a Minister of Culture designated.
Chair, I lied, Chair. I have a bill that's going to have a special assistant to the governor on Hawaiian affairs as we speak.
Wow, there we go.
That's a baby step to doing what you've just said.
Excellent. Okay. With that, I think we need to wrap up. But I so appreciate everyone's participation in this very, very important discussion. And it looks like, yeah, we've got some legislation coming from Rep. Ward, which is great. And I believe Vice Chair Kehokolole is going to be putting together a resolution as well. And I'm sure there'll be much more discussion. I look forward to hearing too on your discussion with HTA Chair DeFries too. So with that being said, I think we're going to adjourn. I don't know if Chair Nakashima wanted to say any final words.
Thank you, Chair Simru Bukuru. Yeah, I want to thank all of the Kumu Hula for the presentation today. It's been very informative. Special shout out to Auntie Pua, who I spent several months with on the Mauna Kea group, working group. But yeah, I really appreciated hearing from all of you and hope that this is a start to moving everybody forward. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Okay, well, thank you so much, you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Hello.
Aloha. Aloha.
Aloha.